friends, welcome to my channel. This is your girl Bidisha, and in today's video we are going to talk about the new eyeshadow palette from Huda Beauty. Yes, we are talking about the Naughty Nude palette, and in this video we are going to talk about this eyeshadow palette, swatches, demo, comparison with other palettes, and at last my final thoughts. So if this is something which interests you, then please keep watching. But before that, if you are new to my channel, thanks for stopping by. We talk everything about makeup and beauty, so please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the notification bell icon next to it so that you are not missing any of my future videos. And also please join my Instagram family at Bidisha's Makeups. So without further delay, let's get started. Let's start talking about the housekeeping stuff of this palette. Now, as I mentioned that this got launched today itself. Right now it is available at Sephora online and in store. It is also available at Huda Beauty website. Now I want to do a review of this palette and upload the video as soon as possible because Sephora is having their holiday event going on, and depending on your tier you can get a discount if you are planning to buy this eyeshadow palette. This eyeshadow palette retails for $67, which is $2 more than her regular 18 eyeshadow palettes like the Desert Dust palette or the texture palettes. Now these are also her regular 18 eyeshadow palette, but this retails for $65, whereas she has increased $2 more for this 18 eyeshadow palette. Now this eyeshadow palette is made in Italy like her other 18 pan regular eyeshadow palette, but this has a shelf life of 24 months, but these eyeshadow palettes has a shelf life of 12 months. So I am not sure, is it because of the different eyeshadow texture she has in this palette, or is it like they are also giving 1 year more shelf life, the increased the price of this palette? I'm not sure, but we are going to talk through all those things in this video. Now let's go ahead and talk about the packaging of this eyeshadow palette. Now the outer packaging looks like this, which is a plastic thingy, and definitely I'm going to toss it out, but the eyeshadow palette itself looks like this. Now it is again a plastic packaging, but it is in a nice burgundy shade where you have the name of the palette, which is Naughty written embossed on top of it, and then you have this Naughty and then Nude, which is pretty much shaded, and then in the back you have all the details about the eyeshadow here. Now let's go ahead and look how it looks inside. Now this is how it looks inside. You have a nice big mirror over here, and then all the shades looks like this. Now this eyeshadow palette has 18 eyeshadows, and we have 5 different textures of eyeshadow in this palette. This has 8 velvety soft mattes, 5 high shine buttery metallics, 3 multi-reflective shimmers marble, 1 matte cream marble, and 1 sheer pearl glossy hybrid. Now let's talk about the matte shade on this palette. Now in the first row we have 2 mattes, which is this one and this one. In the second row we have 4 mattes, which is this one and this 3. In the last row we have 2 mattes, which is this one and this one. Now let's talk about the 5 high shine metallics, which is this 2 from the first row, this one from the second row, and this 2 from the last row. Now the 3 multi-reflect marbles are this one and this one from the first row, and this one from the last row. The 1 matte cream marble is this one, which is hard. The last texture in this palette is this one, which is slippery. I know this shade has taken storm in the internet, and this is just like your lip balm. It's a sheer pearl gloss texture, that's what they're calling, but if you want to relate it, it is just like a lip balm. So let's go ahead and swatch this eyeshadow palette.
From right to left: Flipty, Passion, Shameless, Please Me, Hypnotic, Hard, Untamed, Irresistible, Flower Power, Rough, Spicy, Arose, Slippery, Tantric, Naughty, Provocative, Desire, juicy.
So let's go ahead to the application of this eyeshadows. I am having lots of high hopes. So let's see how these are applied on my eyes. I just brought you guys a little bit up close and personal so that you can see me in action while I apply these eyeshadows to my eyes. And let me give you guys a look of the unswatched eyeshadow palette. And this is how it looks like. And I know some of you have questions about this eyeshadow which is slippery, and I know that this is something which we have not seen in any other palette, but trust me, this does not look as weird as in the picture. With unswatched of this shade, this is how it looks like. It looks like, you know, pearls captured inside an eyeshadow, but it is not that crazy how it is in the picture. So let's go ahead and start applying this bad boy to my eyes. So the first shade which I'm going to use is this shade, which is rough, and I am using Sonia J's Blender Pro brush to apply this shade. Wow, this is pigmented, and I just did a little tap on the eyeshadow, and this is the payoff of the shade. I am building the shade on my crease, and as you can see, I am going higher on my crease just to make my eyes look a little big, and at the same time I'm going to drag it down to my lower lash line to give a V-like effect over here. The next shade which I'm going to use is this shade, which is Naughty, and I'm going to use Worker Pro brush from Sonia G to apply this shade. These matte shades are very pigmented. I just tapped a little bit of my brush on this Naughty shade, and this is the level of pigmentation I'm getting. So I'm going to bring it down as I'm applying it on my crease just to give the depth to my V shape I am making in the eye. I'm planning to do a cut crease today, and that's why I am just applying the NARS eye primer in the shade medium. And while you do the cut crease, it's not that you need to get that perfect cut crease shape. You can always make, you know, things perfect with the eyeshadow, and I'm just going to blend it so that there is no harsh line. The next shade which I'm going to use is this shade, which is Tantric, and I'm gonna use my finger to apply this shade. So let me go ahead and apply it. Wow, it's beautiful. And as I have done the cut crease with a primer, it is sticking so nicely on top of the primer. For my inner corner, I'm going to use this shade, which is Flower Powder. It's a very chunky texture, and it is very soft. For my lower lash line, I'm gonna use the shade Naughty and Rough. I'm going to mix both the shade and I'm going to apply. This is how the final eye look turned out to be. Let's go ahead and do some side-by-side comparison with other Huda Beauty regular 18 shadow palette. Now let's start with her first eyeshadow palette, which is the texture eyeshadow palette, and this is how it looks like. She has also revamped this eyeshadow palette, which she calls remastered textured eyeshadow palette. Now I have not finished using this palette, and it didn't make me any sense to buy the remastered one. So this is her original texture palette. Now this is how the textured palette, which is in rose gold edition, in below this one, and the Naughty palette looks side by side. Let's compare with her next eyeshadow palette, which is the Desert Ducks palette, and this is how it looks like. If I open it, this is how it looks inside, and this is how the Naughty palette compare with the Desert Ducks palette. As I'm looking into this eyeshadow palettes, definitely I can see some similarity in the shades. So let's go ahead and swatch the shades which I feel have some kind of similarity among these three palettes. So let's start with the first shade, which is this one. And this is the shade Arose. The second shade I'm going to take is from the palette Textures eyeshadow palette, and I'm going to take this shade, which is one of the popular shade, which is Henna. And the last shade I'm going to take is from her Desert Dust palette, which is this shade, which is Blazing. And let me take this shade too, which is Amber, and let's go ahead and swatch them. And these are the shade which I see have a similar tone, but they are not exactly same. The next shade which I'm going to compare is this one, which is Untanned from the Naughty palette. I'm going to take the shade Bossy from the textured palette, which is this one. The next shade which I'm going to take is a close shade but not close enough, which is Saffron. So let me go ahead and swatches. So the first shade, this one is from a Naughty palette, which is untanned. Let me swatch it a little bit more. This is how it looks like. The next shade is from the textured palette, which is Bossy, and you can see there is a little undertone difference, but almost the shade looks similar. And the last shade, which is close enough but definitely not similar, is Saffron from the Desert Ducks palette. So let's go ahead and do a comparison of the shade Naughty, which is this one. I will compare it with the shade Cocoa from the texture shade, which is this one. And then the last shade with which I'm going to compare is the shade which is this one, which is Audio. So let's go ahead and swatch them, and this is how it looks like. As you can see, these two shades down here has a similar kind of undertone, and this one has a little bit of reddish undertone. This has more like a brown undertone. Let's do a comparison of a metal shade. So let's start with the shade this one, which is Desire. Let's compare it with the shade Rose Gold from the textured palette. This is a textured eyeshadow. And then from this palette, let's do the Turkish Delight, which is this one, and this is how it looks like. Again, a similar undertone. Now these are the shades which I picked today to compare with her other eyeshadow palette from her line. Now these are not the exact same shade, but definitely they have the same undertone. Definitely few of the shades are from the same family of color. Now let's go ahead and talk about my final thoughts about this palette. Now, as I mentioned, this palette got launched today and I went to Sephora to pick it up. So some of you might be thinking this is my first impression, but I am using Huda eyeshadow for years now. So as soon as I start playing with the shades and swatches, I definitely know what kind of palette is this. Now let's start talking about the color story of this palette. Now this is definitely a color story which I love. A nice warm burgundy eyeshadow palette with lots of metallics and kind of new textures of eyeshadow she has introduced. So definitely I love the color story of this eyeshadow palette. I don't have her nude eyeshadow palette and also the Mercury retrograde eyeshadow because those color story did not appeal me, so I don't have that. Now talking about the texture of this palette, now these has 8 matte shades. They are incredible. They are pigmented, they swatch nicely, they are applied nicely, they are blendable. No issues with the matte shades from her palette. Talking about the metallic shades from her palette, again they are pigmented, they are textured, they are soft. So as you swatch these eyeshadows, they go a dent in the span. Now let's talk about the marble metallic shade she has created. Now in the marble shade, she have 3 metallic shades, which is this one Passion, a Flower Power, and Provocative, and then another marble shade is this one Hard, but that is a matte shade. Now talking about this 3 metallic shade in the marble texture, I find the shade Passion as one of the best. Now talking about the only marble matte shade in this palette, which is this one, and I would say it's a normal matte shade, nothing extraordinary over here. I would say other matte shades are much more pigmented than this one. Now let's talk about the last texture in this palette, which is this one Slippery. Now this looks weird in the picture, but as I'm swatching, I'm getting used to it. Now this is nothing extraordinary. Again, it's just a lip balm kind of feelings, and I'm not sure where I'm going to top this eyeshadow with a powder or a metallic eyeshadow. Maybe the day where I want to give a glossy eye look, I am just going to apply this all over my lid and call it a day. Overall, I love this palette. Now if you are in a market looking for a warm burgundy fall kind of eyeshadow palette, I think you can grab this one. The only concern I have with this palette is they have introduced this marble kind of texture and then this pearl kind of texture in this palette. Now this is a very nice strategy for marketing, but I would have loved if they have worked more towards the improvement on the quality of the eyeshadow rather than this marketing gimmicky. So that's the only concern I have. Other than that, I love the matte in this shade and the color story too. And that's all I have to say about this Naughty Nude palette from Huda Beauty. I hope you liked this video and enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Also let me know if you have picked this baby during the Sephora sale, and I'm going to see you guys in my next video. Till then, bye.